Hi, everyone. I'm Uday. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for Studio. Today, I'm going to be walking you through some basic features in the Studio app. It's download for free on Mac and Windows. I believe we dropped a link to download it in the chat. So if you haven't downloaded Studio yet, feel free to get it on your computer and follow along as I build. I'm going to apologize in advance for being a little bit sick today, so I might mute myself if I need to cough or get a drink of water. So sorry about that, but I will be taking questions throughout the presentation. There's a lot going on in Studio, and the range of features can be pretty intimidating for new users. So I'll take questions throughout and also take questions at the end. Feel free to drop them in the chat, and then we'll just select some to answer as I go along, and then at the end. This session is really targeted at people who have never used Studio before or just started experimenting with it. So it's going to be a fairly simple overview of a bunch of features. I'm going to start by introducing the Studio app, talk a little bit about the home screen. Then we're going to build a platypus together that I designed with my colleague. You can see it on the thumbnail. And I'm going to just spotlight a variety of features like finding parts, selecting parts, rotating and hinging them, and then maybe a little bit about instruction maker, step editor, and our marketplace integration if you're someone that really wants to share your builds or build them in real life. So I think we're good to go ahead and get started. Like I said, we'll be monitoring the chat, so we'll just answer questions. All right, so this is the Studio home screen. All right, 1 second. Okay, so the Studio home screen has a couple of different sections. Up at the top, if this is your first time launching Studio, you're gonna see the tutorial. This tutorial teaches you how to build a little snail. It's a little bit basic than what I'm gonna be going through today, but it's a great place to get started if you haven't used Studio before. Then you can see your recent model files. So for me, you can see the platypus I was working on, and then I've just got some of my own personal projects like the Hall of Armor. Then in the featured section, you see some different things that we're promoting. This is where you can download models of Lego sets to build Studio. Maybe you can't get the set in person, you just want to have the experience of building it digitally. This is a great way to familiarize yourself with like the Lego building system if you need some inspiration. And then we have our Studio Gallery staff picks, and we actually have a whole section for the Studio Gallery over here where you can browse different builds uploaded from the community. You can download some of them and tinker with them. So there's a lot of stuff to discover here. We also have a help center with written help articles and a forum where you can talk to other users. So these are all great resources to get you started if you're brand new to Studio. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file. This is your building space. So like I said, there's a lot of stuff going on here. What you're seeing right now is the ground. You can scroll up and down to kind of zoom in and out. And then if you hold down your control keys, you're able to rotate and pan around the ground so that you can see your model from different angles. It says our sound is breaking up.
I'll check on that.
Okay. Sorry about the sound, guys. We're just going to check on that and see if we can improve it. I'm going to keep going for now, but please sound off in the comments if our sound is still having issues. So on the left here, we have all of the different bricks that are available in Studio. So there are a bunch of different categories, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when it comes to finding parts. But it is very helpful to know how parts are categorized in the catalog because that is where we pull this information from. So you can see all of the different types of bricks over here. We just kind of show them in a standard white color, and then if you click into them, you can place them. Okay, so that is how you place a brick. Now you can see that we have our rotation gizmo activated over. So if you don't know how to rotate parts, this is not the best part to show you how to rotate something since it's a one brick. So let me try this guy. So if you click on these arrow keys, that allows you to rotate parts. You can also input specific angles by just typing them into this box over here. and there are arrow key shortcuts that you can use without clicking on those as well. But the important thing to talk about here is that this rotation gizmo is activated by default for new users to make it easier for you all to rotate bricks. If you want to disable that, you can just head over here to the select menu and you can change from rotate to default select, and that will eliminate those rotations. And then I see we have a question in the chat about copying and pasting. Yeah, you can use Control C, Control V. I believe on Mac it's Command. So I'm on a Mac. I'm going to Command C and then Command V, and then there we go, copy and pasting a brick. Another thing you can do is you can actually use the clone tool. So this is the clone tool. If you click on a brick, that just allows you to place infinite copies of it around your building space. So that's just a brief intro to getting started. Now I'm going to go ahead and start my little build, and we'll just go through a few different features as they come up. So with my platypus build, I started with wanting to use a specific piece for the feet of the platypus. So to find that piece, I'm going to look for plant, and it's this one right here, this plant plate with 3 leaves. So I really wanted this to be the base of my platypus because I thought it was a nice parts usage because it kind of looked like the webbed feet. Now, this is where finding parts can be a little bit tricky because it's really helpful if you know how parts are categorized and if you know their names. For example, I knew I wanted this part already. I knew that it was classified under plant. I know it's classified under plant with leaves if I really wanted to get that granular with it. Can you enable closed captioning? Sorry, guys. We're trying to enable closed captioning, but I'm not sure if we're able to. So my colleague on that, and I hope the audio improves a little bit, but we'll try to get the captions up for you guys so you can at least read the Okay, so continuing with our platypus feet. Okay, guys, we're gonna pause the live stream for a second and see if we can figure out the audio issues because yeah, if there's about out, that's not going to be helpful. So give us a minute while we try to figure this out. Okay, everybody, sorry about that. We're still working on fixing the audio. So my colleague, for now, I'm gonna keep the tutorial paused. If you guys have some questions, I could try to answer those. But I'm hoping that the audio stabilizes a bit. It says that our stream quality is fine, so we're just trying to figure out what the disconnect is. And yes, this will be available to view on our YouTube channel later. And I see we have a question from Lane about if you can see the top, bottom, side, or isometric view as in CAD softwares. And yeah, you can see as many different views as you want. So right now I'm on a Mac, I'm holding down the control key and I'm dragging with my mouse, and it allows you to see all around the part. And again, you can zoom in to your heart's content and you can zoom out to your heart's content. We're trying to enable closed captioning. Unfortunately, it looks like YouTube is blocking us from doing it, so we're trying to correct that. Oh, okay, we have a great question from Todd. Trying to attach pieces on top of one another can be difficult to line up. Is there a specific angle that makes it easier to line things up? We actually have the connect tool in Studio. So I'm gonna bring in this plant piece. So if you click on the connect icon in the toolbar, and then you click on a part, you will see these little blue cubes, and that shows you where parts can connect to each other. So these parts, for example, if you click the connection points on both of them, that's a great way to easily align them without having to kind of drag them over. Because I know that especially when you're working with larger subassemblies in Studio, such as like floors of a building, it can be hard to get them to stack. So if you just use the connect tool and line up the stud, you can also see that these guys have bar connections because they do have space to accommodate bars through the hollow studs. And so that's what those cylinders that you're seeing are. How do you extend it to more than a 12 by 12 base? As you build more, the ground moves with your build. So for example, if I want to place this leaf part further away, that starts extending out the ground. And then I can just keep doing that and the ground will just get bigger and bigger. Okay, it's looking like audio is a little bit better. So, okay, that's good to hear. Glad that has been resolved. I'm gonna go ahead and keep going with the tutorial. So, platypus feet. Now I need to rotate this guy. So I'm just gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it with the keyboard keys, which is how I would usually do it, just so I can show you guys a little bit more of how the rotation gizmo works. That's not the correct way I wanted to rotate it. I need to use the green arrows. So now I've got these feet facing away from each other. And I'm just gonna go ahead, and that's me using the keyboard arrows this time. And so now I've got, oh, wait, nope. Whoops, I don't want his feet facing outwards in different directions. So I need to correct them. Okay, so we have a question about flexible parts in there. So yeah, any tips on how to manage flexible parts? I always have issues getting chains, etc. in the right place. So flexible parts in Studio, you can pose many flexible parts, but they can be kind of hard to work with. So that's actually something that we're currently working on addressing. We're investigating updates to flexible parts right now. If you head over to the Studio forum, we have a bug and suggestion tracker in the subforum titled Studio Development Requests. And so you'll notice that flexible parts is a highly voted issue in there. And so that's where we're going to keep the community updated about the status of that project. So I can tell you that we're working on improving it and to just stay tuned for updates there. All right, so now that we have the feet of the platypus set, and this is kind of how I start designing stuff. I'm not a huge mock builder, but I do like doing some things. And so for my platypus, I started from the feet. And now I know that there's a part that would look great attached to these feet that would work as legs. So I'm going to look for an arch. And as you can see, these are all of like the different styles of arch bricks that you have. But I need a shorter arch brick, which I seem to be having a little bit of trouble finding. So I'm gonna instead search by brick. Is it under brick round? And this is great hands-on finding parts experience, because yeah, I thought that it was classified as an arch brick, but it doesn't look like it is. So then I need to check if it's classified as a slope curved. And yes, there it is. So yeah, I thought that this was an arch brick, but it's not. It is a curved slope. But there were similar bricks under the arch brick. So that's why sometimes you just need to play around until you're like quite familiar with BrickLink category names, because it can take a little while to find a part. Or actually a tip that I like to use when I can't remember the BrickLink name of a part, because I build so many Lego sets, I can usually think of a set that part comes in. And so I just like to go to bricklink.com, pull up that set's inventory, and then just find the part in that inventory. And then I use the name to be able to build in Studio or buy it on BrickLink. Can you import a 2D or 3D reference in Studio? Yes, you can. We have a reference image feature that allows you to import an image and then build against it. You can also import 3D OBJ files, and we'll convert that into a sculpture for you. And then I also see Carla says, is Studio for regular brick building only, or can it be used to create mosaics too? Sorry. You can create mosaics. There's actually a little mosaic tool up here. Those are features that I'm not going to get into right now because they're a little bit more complex, but we have help articles about them if you search in the Studio Help Center. And actually, if you check out our Instagram account, we have Studio like Feature Fridays where we'll spotlight different functions. So we spotlighted the reference image in January, and we spotlighted the mosaic feature in February. All right, so once again, I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste and then rotate these different leg pieces. Okay, so now we have some legs for our platypus. To start building his body, again, I like to build pretty basic things, so I'm just going to go with a regular 2x6 plate. And then we're going to have to rotate this guy too. And here's where you're seeing, like, I'm having a little bit of trouble placing this brick. So I think it looks like I'm spaced out correctly. So I'm just going to try using the connect tool for this. And there we go. Clips in perfectly. So that's a great example of where the connect tool is a little bit more helpful for just getting it on top of those pieces. Except I actually didn't want to get it on top. It's supposed to be below those parts. Okay, so that was a pretty simple move. Looking back at the chat, I noticed when looking for a bar piece that the bar type doesn't seem to appear in the normal parts palette, but when I search for bar, they come up under bar. That might be a bug. I'm not sure why that would be happening. If you write on the Studio forum, we'll be able to take a look at that for you. Can you change the surface of a brick as in like how stickers are added to bricks? So yeah, as Brick Morepork said in the chat, we do have some decorated parts in Studio. We also have an add-on app called Part Designer where you can import image files and like apply them to bricks to create custom bricks that you can then import into Studio and use in your models. All right, so now we just have to build up the body of this guy. So I'm gonna go, again, pretty basic, just gonna take a 2x3 brick and put it right in there. And then I'm just gonna get a couple of 1x1 plates, or sorry, 1x2 plates to fill in that spot at the back. But I'd kind of like to give him a tail. So what I'm going to look for is a plate 1x2, plate modified 1x2, and see if I can't find this guy with the bar. Because I want to add a little bit of posability into this model. So platypuses are kind of like beavers. So I'm thinking a beaver-like tail, I'm pretty sure is what they have. So I'm going to get a 2x3 tile modified with the clips at the end. And this is actually another good call out. You can see that we have 3 different types of the same part. That's because some part molds have changed over the years. You know, some parts have been in production for a very long time. So this is all basically the same kind of part that I need. But which one you use is going to be more important if you want to build this in person. Okay, so I'm going to go with this one. I'm not sure which variant this is, but right now I'm not trying to build it in real life. So I'm going to connect it to the bar right here. And you can see that if I slide it too far over to the left, the parts go transparent. The parts are going transparent because I have collision enabled. So collision, which is up here and highlighted in red, that shows you when parts can't actually connect that way in real life. And again, that's really important if you do want to build physically. So if you turn collision off, that's going to remove like kind of that call out. But then you might end up building something that can't actually be done in real life. And so that's fine if you just want to do something digitally. But personally, I really like building things physically. So even when I do digital design, it's in service of building something in real life when I'm done. So I always like to keep collision on. And I just need to move this guy a little bit over to the left in order for him to connect properly. Okay, and Matthew says, is it best to choose color early in the build process or at the end? I think it really depends on you. Personally, I kind of like just designing with the white bricks and then coloring stuff at the end. And we are going to color parts. After I finish building like the base platypus, we're going to pick some different colors and we'll kind of go through the color palette feature. But yeah, I guess it just depends on what you're building. For something like this, I wouldn't have selected color at the beginning, but maybe for something like my Hall of Armor mock that I like to work on, that's something where I would probably color it as I go. How do you determine which bricks can connect? That's a great question because if you're not intimately familiar with the Lego brick building system, that's going to be harder for you to figure out. But that's where the connect tool really comes in handy. So, okay, like here's a piece. I actually don't know if I've ever even seen this piece before. So this is a great example. Like maybe you don't know what this part can connect to. So just click the connect tool in the toolbar, click on the piece, and you'll see that it has 5 connection points. And for this one, all 5 connection points are on the bottom. So you can connect studs at any of these 4 corners or in the middle. That's what the little cubes mean. So you can't connect anything on top because this reminds me of the dots picture frame holder. So I believe this piece is supposed to be used to hold a piece of paper, and a piece of paper is not a Lego brick, so that's why there's no connection points marked there. But yeah, if you want to connect something, just I showed this earlier, but yeah, just draw that over to one of these cubes. And that's a handy way to connect parts when you're not exactly sure how they function in real life. Can you group several parts together for easier tweaking? You can. You can group parts together as submodels. So if you select multiple parts, so I'm just going to do the foot and the leg here, you can press create into submodel, and this is his back right leg. So I'm just going to title it back right leg. So now this is created as a submodel. So I can still edit this. If I go into edit down here, I can still affect the parts individually. But then once I escape, so I just hit the escape key and then I return to the main model, this can only be moved together. And you can release submodels by just pressing release down there. That breaks open the submodel and it makes them back into individual parts. Okay, so now that we've done the tail, I want to give him a little bit of a slope to his back. So I'm going to look for a 2x3 slope curved. And I think this is the part that I want. So that's going to go right onto his back. And then I want a 2x2 plate in front of it. And now it's kind of time to work on his head. So platypuses are kind of duck-billed. So I want to start by making his bill. So I think a 2x4 plate is going to be easiest to kind of stick out and give that length that I'm looking for. And then to add some detail, I'm gonna tile over his bill so that it looks a little bit smooth like it would on the real animal. So I'm gonna look for a relatively newer part, a 1x2 tile, this one, tile round, this semicircle. We're gonna put that at the end of his bill, and then here I want a 1x2 tile. And this is a great example of the part variance. So this is a tile with a groove, this is a tile without a groove. So you can see that subtle difference in the mold. There's a little groove. On this guy, there's no groove on this one. So because I've been building Lego sets for a while, I know that that's the old part, that's outdated. I don't want that because it's going to be harder to get that part if I want to buy these parts to build this in real life. Okay, so now we need to worry about eyes because I kind of have the top part of his bill done. And I have his feet done and I have his tail done, but I need to worry about his eyes. So I want to find a 2x2 tile modified with 2 studs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a 1x2 bracket so that I can have his eyes facing forward because I don't want his eyes facing out from the sides of his head. Okay, perfect. And I mean, honestly, like this could work. Like I maybe don't even need to put eyes on him just because those open studs kind of look like eyes, but I would rather put some decoration on. Okay, AJL Brick says, how do you organize your workflow? Do you create steps during the process or after once the build's done, i.e. rebuild it but with steps? That is a good question. We're going to go into that once we're done with the build because we do have an auto step generator in our instruction maker. So personally, the way I like to build in Studio is that I like to create my model and then I'll auto generate the instruction steps and then I'll spend time kind of cleaning up the auto generation and making the flow more according to what I would want, like to the order that I would want to build in. Mama Bear 72 says, how do you determine if a part is old or new? That is another great question, because the way I'm doing it is I just know because I'm a huge Lego nerd. The way for you to tell if you're using a part that's outdated, when you get to the end of your build, you're able to export it to a wanted list and buy it on BrickLink. So you can see like old you can see that old parts will be more expensive. Sorry. So it won't show that they're out of production necessarily, but they will appear to be quite expensive. So you can also use a different palette if you really want to make sure that you're using parts that are currently in production so that it's not going to be too expensive to realize your build. I would really advise using the BDP palettes because the BrickLink Designer Program palettes are kept pretty up to date, because when you design for a set, those parts need to be available in production when the set is produced about a year or a year and a half later. So right now, I would say our BDP series. Sorry about that. Our BDP Series 4 sets just went up for crowdfunding about a month ago. So I'd say the BDP Series 4 palette is a pretty accurate, up-to-date parts list for what's available right now. So I would maybe start with that palette to make sure that you're using parts that are currently in production. And yeah, as Brazilians has said, if you select a singular part, that part number appears in the lower left corner of the workspace. Click on that number and it'll take you to the element page in the BrickLink catalog. So when I select this part, right, you see the number. So that'll open up a page in your browser and BrickLink shows you when that part first appeared and to what year it appeared to. Welcome to Euphoria says that 2x2 tile modified is a great example of how hard it is to find things in Studio and BrickLink. It's a plate modified really because it's got studs on it, but you can't find it there. I hear you. It can be difficult to find parts in BrickLink. Our parts determinations, I don't know why that's classified as a 2x2 tile exactly, but I think it does fit more in the tile family than the plate family to a certain degree, so that must be why it's classified as that. But either way, it can be difficult if you don't know that to locate the part. So that's like I said, that's why I like to just find the inventory of a set that I know the part comes in, because then it's really easy for me to find. And then someone says you can right click the parts in the list and put as hide. I hide old variants generally because when you upload it to a wanted list to buy, you may get stuck with high prices for a common piece if you just pick an old variant by mistake. Yeah, that's also a good point, that you can hide the old variants so that you don't actually end up building with them. You don't accidentally end up building with them. Okay, so let's head back to the eyes of our platypus. So I'm going to look for 1x1 round tile eye. And that did not turn up any eye prints. Is that because... There we go. That's because I was hiding decorated bricks. So that's also a good shout out. If you click this button, that can affect what types of bricks you see. So I searched 1x1 round tile. That's all I see because I've turned decorated bricks off. If I turn decorated bricks on, then suddenly there's a lot more parts because now all the decorated tiles come in. So now if I put in that eye search, I can see it. So I have a few different options here. I could make this brickhead style. I could give him little brickhead's eyes. You know, that's pretty cute. But I don't know. I don't think this fits the brickhead style because it's not quite as blocky as those sets. So I could make my platypus be sleeping. That's not a bad look. He's just chilling out. I could build him a little rock. He could be sunning himself by the river. I could even make him... I could make him a little bit suspicious. Or I could just go with some regular eyepieces. Or if I really wanted to, which is what I think we did on the thumbnail, I could go with these like cutesy eyes. Oh, actually, I think those are spider eyes. Ooh, yeah, I don't know if I like that. I'm gonna take that off actually because it reminds me of like big Lego spiders. So I'm actually gonna go with like the little bit suspicious eyes to change it up a little bit. Okay, and then now we just need to smooth off the back of the platypus. So I'm gonna take another 1x2 tile. And I'm gonna grab another one of this tile modified. And then that smooths off our platypus pretty well. And you'll notice I didn't make him totally studless. I left a couple of studs up there, and that's because I think it might be fun to accessorize him. So I want to find some kind of 1x2 jumper. So I'm going to go ahead and use this round one. And then that provides me an attachment point to give him some kind of accessory. So I think we should put a hat on him. So I'm gonna turn decorated bricks off again. So I can make him a chef, but those parts can't connect. So I actually need a 1x1 round plate or a stud. And then will the chef hat connect on top of one stud? It will. So look, now we have a suspicious chef platypus. If I go back to the hats, oh, let's make him a wizard. Except that part can't connect like that. I can give him a little Sensei Wu hat. Or I could give him a bit of a cowboy hat. And that looks pretty good to me. So our main build is now done. I'm going to head over to the chat for a second because I think we have quite a few. Can you select by part number in the search box? You mean, can you search by part number? I believe you can. Let me double check. So 1748 is the part for that. Yeah, so you can type in the part number and it'll pull up the different pieces that you can find. So if that's what you mean, that is possible. Welcome to Euphoria says more about the tile versus plate. You know what? You might want to ask our catalog administrators in the main forum because they might have some insight for you as to why that part is classified as a tile and not as a plate. The question regarding which bricks can connect. There's an option to view compatible bricks, which is useful. Yeah, you can view compatible parts. So that can also help you determine what parts can connect, especially with tires. So for example, like the Lego group has a bunch of different tires, like rubber tires and then like the tire insert pieces. So if you want to find out like what rubber parts you can put on which hard plastic parts, the compatible feature is definitely useful for that. With those eyes, it's also a great example where you choose something you like, then you find it's not available in the color you want for the model. Yeah, that can happen, but you know, if you filter by like the colors available when you do decide to color your model, then it should be okay. And I think most of the eyepieces are available in, I think, just like white or black for the most part. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, like for that specific part. But again, that's hard to know unless you pay as much attention to Lego sets as some people like me. And yeah, Ben's brick design said something similar. If you have the step list visible on the right, if it doesn't have that color available, it'll have an exclamation point by it. We'll talk about that a little bit with the coloring. Roberto says, is there a shortcut to place the selected pieces not connected in the same level? I'm not sure exactly what you mean. I think if you mean at like the same kind of like height level, again, I would say connect is just the easiest tool to use if you want like those really precise connections. So that's what I would advise going with. Lane says, is there a way to pan the camera sometimes? It seems slightly off center. Yes, if you hold down the space bar and then you drag the ground, you can move it around. So that's definitely helpful. And then if you click the camera icon on the top left, it has the views like CAD. Yes, up here. Okay, and then last thing before we get into coloring parts, I just wanted to show you how to hinge parts. So I said earlier that I wanted the tail to be posable. So you'll see that I can move into the hinge mode, and when I'm in hinge mode, it shows me what parts can hinge. Like it's showing me that these parts can rotate a little bit. But actually I don't think that would really work in real life. There is a little bit of play in those parts, but that's not the best example of hinge. It's really this tail that's a good example, because you can hinge this tile around the bar, and so then that allows you to get a little bit more dynamic pose for our platypus, since there's not really any other parts on him that can move. So you can have his tail up, but actually I think I want his tail down, because I feel like up it looks a little bit aggressive. And you can see that moving his tail down just moved the entire ground lower as well. So his feet are no longer resting on the ground because the tile is now lower than them. So I just fixed that because I don't want the tail to be lower than the feet. So there we go. And then, yeah, we have some comments in the chat about how you can right click and pan to cursor. That is correct. That will also center you. Okay, so now we can get into colors of parts. So you have the color palette up here. So right now everything is in white. We do have a function that's going to show you the cheapest color for every part. So the cheapest color I can buy that slope in is tan. That is great if there's a part where you don't really care about the color. So not really in this build, but if, say you have like a much larger build and the inside is just a bunch of random bricks that you're never going to see, the cheapest color feature is really useful, because then you can just buy the cheapest color to fill up the center of your model, since the color of that part doesn't matter. But for now, I think let's make him bright green. I think I want a green platypus, so I just want to color his body green, and then you'll see that the green showed up in my content colors, because that's a color that's currently being used in the model. So I can just color multiple parts green at once. I could also just, oh, I'm still in hinge mode. Let me move back into, I'm going to move into default select. But if I wanted to, I could just select a bunch of parts and then put them all in green. Of course, that doesn't look the best, and then you'll notice that we just had a bunch of warning signs pop up, because these parts don't exist in these colors. You know, like I think as someone in the chat was saying, right, like what color do the eye tiles show up in? They aren't available in green, so you can't do that. And right now I'm also getting that warning for the headgear. So if I go into the headgear, I'll see that these are the colors that this hat exists in. It's only in dark tan or regular tan, it looks like. So I'm going to choose dark tan because I think that that's going to look better. All right, now for the rest of this guy's body, I'm going to select these parts and color them green. I need to make sure I get that modified plate as well. Oh, but that modified plate doesn't exist in green. And I'd rather pick things that it does actually exist in. So it exists in dark green, not bright green. So I guess that one part of him is going to be dark green. The feet, I don't really want the feet to be green. I think let's go with a nice red. I just saw these parts in red for the first time recently, so I think let's make them red. I guess we're making him a little bit holiday colored. That part doesn't exist in bright green either. Does it exist in regular green? Yes, it looks like it does. Oh, but actually we could do his bill in a different color. So I'm actually gonna change his bill, let's say, to be coral. I need to get that stud. Okay, so he looks a little bit like a clown now, just slightly, but we still have a problem that this part doesn't exist in coral. So what color does this part exist in? It exists in dark pink. I think that's good enough. I think maybe he just maybe he just ate some candy or something, so that's why the edge of his bill is a slightly different color. And for his tail, let's select a fun color for this. Let's go with dark purple. All right, so here we go. So we have a very candy colored platypus. Okay, and this is the filter under the color palette where it shows you what's available and unavailable. So you can see what's unavailable in BrickLink and what's unavailable within the selected palette. So when you select unavailable within the selected palette and you're in the main palette, then that's going to tell you what parts just don't exist in those colors. Oh, and then welcome to your Euphoria had a good point that if you select the parts that make up the build, then the color palette will show you which colors they're all available in. There, so we can make them all dark turquoise. Oh, oops. I accidentally changed one of his feet. All right, there we go. Actually, I think the turquoise works a little bit better than the coral anyway, so thank you. All right, so it seems like we don't have a lot of questions in the chat right now, so I'm going to keep going. I'm going to talk briefly about rendering. So if you didn't know, in Studio, you can render photorealistic images of your models. And photorealistic means that it's going to look like it does in real life. So you can set different angles for your models here. You have a bunch of different settings. So you can do an animation, you can do a photo render, you have different quality settings, you can position it differently. You can have the Lego logo on the studs. You can add UV degradation and scratches, and you can also change the different aspect ratios. So this is really useful if you want to share your model somewhere, such as for the BrickLink Designer program. Like, a lot of people will just render out their models in Studio and then use that as their image. Some people build their model and use that, but I think we also see over in Lego Ideas that a lot of people's builds are using Studio renders, so that's pretty cool. And in fact, before I really started using Studio, I had no idea how people were getting such cool images of their models. Because you can tell that they're rendered, but I was always like, where do they come from? Well, a lot of them come from Studio. Any suggestions for best PC specs for rendering? I use an old laptop. And yes, I do know that build that you're talking about, your Unseen University Library. Oh, it took an age. That's what you're saying. It took a long time to render. Yeah, renders can take a while. I've noticed, particularly on Macs, because they do take up a lot of space, and like a lot of processing power. I don't know what the best specs for rendering are, but if you comment in the forum, I'll be able to respond back to you with some more information. Okay, yeah, so that's just a brief introduction to rendering. Now I'm going to quickly take you guys through the instruction maker. So in the instruction maker, you can see that I have 2 steps. And to be quite honest, I'm not sure how I ended up with 2 steps because I don't remember creating a second step. So I'm going to go ahead and delete my extra step, and I'm going to click Generate Steps right here. And so this is the auto generation feature. And so look, it just made me 15 steps to build my platypus. So it seems like a pretty decent like a pretty decent build flow already, right? Like we're just building the legs and the feet, then we're putting in these bricks for the body and the tail. Sometimes you can have some funky stuff here where parts are kind of placed out of order, but in general, this build flow looks to be pretty perfect. So I'm very happy with that. I think the auto-generated steps worked perfectly. You know, if I wanted to be a little bit picky, I could change around the order of these parts, like maybe start with the plate and then add the arch bricks and then add the feet. But I'm fine with this, so I'm going to move into page design. Page design is where you can actually design your instructions. So you can play around with the different elements. You can resize stuff. You can move stuff around on the page. You can even add like custom images at the back if you really want to have like your own like bespoke instructions with your own design. And as you can see, it's just following the build flow that you outline in the step editor. So my tip for instruction maker is that editing the steps in the step editor is way easier than trying to edit any kind of flow in page design. So you should always start in step editor and then move into page design. But this is where a lot of people will design builds for their, design instructions for their builds and then be able to reshare them with the community. So if you upload to the studio gallery and you set your model to be downloadable, people will be able to see your instructions and they're going to be able to build it themselves. So again, this is just a very quick overview of it because I don't want to overwhelm you guys with too much information. But lastly, if you sign into BrickLink up here, and then you click this button, you're going to be able to upload your design to a wanted list, and then you can use our easy buy function to buy the parts for your model from the BrickLink marketplace. So this is a really great way for you to build these things in real life. Like I said, if you're someone that wants to build digitally first and then take it into the physical world, that's a great thing to do. And just make sure you're always filtering by what's unavailable so that you're not trying to buy parts in colors that don't actually exist. But yeah, I think that that's pretty much a basic overview of a lot of the functions in Studio. Leon, don't worry, we're not going to delete this. This will be up for you to watch later on our YouTube channel. And Brick Morepork, yes, I think a gaming PC would be good. Like Welcome to Euphoria said, I think it would depend on like the GPU specs. But I know that like for us rendering on like gaming PCs works pretty well. Lane says, are there any of these tutorials somewhere more advanced like Technic? We have some tutorial videos that were created for us by Boone Langston several years ago. So those are linked in our studio help center and some of the help articles. They have links to his tutorial videos. At this stage, we don't have other tutorial videos, but we would like to work on creating some more. So if people want to see Technic tutorials, that is definitely something that we'll keep in mind. And we could always do another live stream like this that spotlights functions like that. Brick Morepork says Boom is awesome. I think you mean Boone. Yeah, he is actually. He's part of the history of BrickLink. He designed the antique fire engine for our AFAL designer program in 2019, and he's now a Lego designer. So if we have any other questions, feel free to sound off in the chat. BrickFlick will be adding some tutorials. That's awesome to hear. We love it when community members create tutorials. We are on Twitter at BrickLink. This was a super helpful intro. I'm glad to hear it. Can we see another one of your designs? Honestly, like I said, I'm not a big mock builder. My biggest mock is a like 3.5 foot tall Avengers Tower that was designed way before the official Lego group set came out. But that's not in studio. That is only a physical build. Can you explain a little bit more about the palettes? Yes, I can. So we're in the main palette right now. That's basically every single part in studio. You have the main parts palette, you have the new parts palette. So those are all of the parts that were just added into studio recently. So you can see a lot of new molds here. Then we have the BDP palettes. Like I said, if you're trying to build with parts that are actively in production from the Lego group, which is going to make it the easiest to build your mock in real life, because those are all parts that should be abundant right now in our BrickLink marketplace, since they're in a bunch of sets that are on shelves. That's where you go to the BDP palettes. And then, of course, if you're designing for the BrickLink Designer program, you need to stay within those palettes. Because as I said, you need to stick to parts that are going to be in production when your set for the BrickLink Designer program is produced, if it's selected as a finalist. So I would highly advise, like right now, it is March 2025. I would stick to like the Series 4 or Series 5 palette would probably be the most current for you to use. If you want to design something and then buy the parts sometime next year, then I would be using the Series 7 and Series 8 palettes. We also have this common palette full of common parts and the Ideas Pick-a-Brick palette, which I actually don't know a lot about. And then you can import your own palettes. So you'll notice over here, I've imported a couple of Lego sets. And so this is the palette for the Town Hall set. So when you import a Lego set as a palette, you get a certain number of parts to build with, and that allows you to just follow the instructions of that Lego set and build it in studio instead of doing it in person, such as if you're lacking the space or something. Like personally for me, I don't have the Town Hall set. I'd love to build it in studio just to, learn some of the building techniques, see what that set was like. So that's these custom palettes. And then you'll notice I have a custom palette called Platypus. And that's all of the parts that I use in this platypus design. And I just made that palette before I did this presentation so that I knew which parts I was using. But I didn't actually end up using it in the presentation because I wanted to show you guys how to find parts in the main palette. Is this restarting now, or was the 8 p.m. UTC start time on the email invite a typo? Unfortunately, that might have been a typo due to daylight savings happening over the weekend in the US. We're just finishing up the presentation now, but this is going to be live on YouTube for you to rewatch after. Welcome to Euphoria says, how do I know which is the current palette? I would take a look at what BDP sets are either shipping or up for crowdfunding at the time period in which you're building, and just go with that palette. So as I said, we just crowdfunded Series 4 last month. So I would use the Series 4 palette if you're going to be building something right now, because those parts are going to be, those sets are going to be produced and shipped, I think, this summer. According to the BDP timeline. And so that means that those parts are available right now in 2025, in spring 2025. Roberto says, if I want to design for Lego Ideas, which palette should I use? I'm not 100% sure, actually, because I don't believe Ideas has the same parts restrictions. Brickmore Pork says, Lego Ideas can use any palette, even colors that don't exist. Yeah, because in the BrickLink Designer program, we don't do part recolors or like custom printed parts, really. We just use existing parts for BDP sets. But for Lego Ideas, a great example that I can remember is the Ship in a Bottle set. That submission used parts, I think, that were last available in 2001. And that set came out in 2016 or 2017. And those parts were recreated when that ship in a bottle set was released. So I don't think Ideas has palette restrictions. And then Brick Morpork says the Series 8 palette will be available soon. The live YouTube webinar is on the 16th of March, so we'll be soon after that. The Series 8 palette is actually available right now. So you can see it. You can see it right here in Studio, the BDP Series 8 palette. We released it a little bit early. Okay, so it seems like we've gone through all the questions, but thank you guys so much. Really great questions. I hope that this intro was helpful for you. If you have more questions, if you're watching it later, feel free to drop it in the comments or in the chat, and we'll do our best to respond. You can also reach us in the studio forum. If you comment there, community members and me, I'm in there as well. We'll be able to reply to you. And I just want to say, please join us on Sunday, on March 16th, as Brick Morpork pointed out, at 12 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time / 7 p.m. UTC for the BDP Series 7 finalist live reveal. Thank you guys so much for joining, and I really hope that we see you again soon. Bye.